One book, one extraordinary life. 48 chapters of saints, science, and the search for God.
I'm Kai.
And I'm Maya.
And this is our take on Autobiography of a Yogi, chapter by chapter.
Two great educators meet in a garden, and neither one needs to convince the other of anything. They already know.
Chapters 29 and 30. Rabindranath Tagore and I compare schools, and the law of miracles.
So we're in the late 20s. Yogananda has founded Ranchi School, this institution focused on both spiritual development and intellectual training. And word reaches him that Rabindranath Tagore wants to visit, not as a guest, as a peer.
Rabindranath Tagore. This is a man who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, first non-European ever to win it. So when he hears about this young educator in Bengal who's building a school along what sounds like completely unorthodox lines, Tagore is intrigued.
The setup is beautiful. Bola, one of Yogananda's brightest students at Ranchi, is walking with Yogananda one morning, and he mentions that he'd attended Tagore's school before coming to Ranchi. He calls it Santiniketan, the haven of peace, at Bolpur. And Bola says, "The songs of Rabindranath have been on my lips since early youth. All Bengal, even the unlettered peasants, delight in his lofty verse."
And Yogananda responds immediately. He says, "I met Rabindranath soon after he received the Nobel Prize for Literature. I was drawn to visit him because I admired his undiplomatic courage in disposing of his literary critics." So Yogananda already knows the poet, already respects him.
What's fascinating is the context. Tagore had just won the Nobel Prize, and the literary establishment in Bengal was not happy about it. The scholars actually flayed him for introducing a new style into Bengal poetry, dismissing the classical forms, breaking all the rules. And Yogananda admires that courage. He respects the uncompromising artist.
And then Yogananda tells Bola the story of their first meeting. He was introduced to Tagore in Calcutta by a man named C.F. Andrews, who introduced him as a Gurudeva, a guru. And Tagore received him graciously. This soothing aura of charm, culture, courtliness, a man with a voice of flute-like quality, stalwart and tall and grave, but with almost womanly tenderness and the spontaneity of a child. He combined all of that.
About 2 years after founding Ranchi School, Yogananda receives an invitation from Tagore to visit him at Santiniketan, and Yogananda goes gladly, because this is an encounter between two great educators who approach the problem completely differently, but who are both trying to answer the same fundamental question: what is education really for?
Okay. So when they meet, Yogananda is struck by Tagore's appearance. He describes him as a model of superb manhood, beautifully chiseled face, nobly patrician, long hair and flowing beard, large melting eyes, and angelic smile. You know, a man who looks like a sage because he's lived like one.
And they immediately began what Yogananda calls a comparative study of our schools, both founded along unorthodox lines. Santiniketan emphasizes literature, poetry, music, self-expression through song. Ranchi emphasizes outdoor instruction, simplicity, and the yoga concentration techniques that Yogananda had already mentioned to Bola.
Tagore laid considerable stress on the study of literature and poetry, and the self-expression through music and song which Yogananda had already noted in the case of Bola. But the Santiniketan children observed periods of silence. They were given no special yoga training.
And Tagore listened with flattering attention to Yogananda's description of the energizing Yogadanda exercises and yoga concentration techniques taught at Ranchi. So here's this moment where both men are genuinely curious about the other's approach. Neither one is defensive. Neither one is preaching. They're just comparing notes on how to awaken the human being.
Tagore told Yogananda about his own educational struggles. He said, "I fled from school after the 5th grade. I could readily understand how his innate poetic delicacy had been affronted by the dreary, disciplinary atmosphere of a schoolroom."
And Tagore explains his philosophy. He says, "That is why I opened Santiniketan under the shady trees and the glories of the sky. A child is in his natural setting amidst the flowers and songbirds. Only thus may he fully express the hidden wealth of his individual endowment. True education can never be crammed and pumped from without. Rather, it must aid in bringing spontaneously to the surface the infinite hoards of wisdom within."
That's a beautiful statement. And Yogananda immediately agrees. He says, "The idealistic and hero-worshipping instincts of the young are starved on an exclusive diet of statistics and chronological eras."
But they discovered many identical features: outdoor instruction, simplicity, ample scope for the child's creative spirit. The difference was in emphasis. Tagore focused on the intellect and the heart, on poetry and music and self-expression. Yogananda added to that the training of the energy body itself through yoga.
And then Yogananda tells Bola about Tagore's father, Devendranath, who was called Maharishi, the great sage, a man who had spent 2 years in meditation in the Himalayas, and he gave his son this land, this fertile place where the Santiniketan school would be born. And Devendranath is from an illustrious family. His entire family tree is filled with geniuses. Tagore's brothers Yogananda and Abanindra are among the foremost artists of India.
Yogananda was invited to stay overnight in the guest house, and in the evening he sees Tagore seated with a group in the patio. And what Yogananda witnesses is extraordinary. He describes it like this: "Time unfolded backward. The scene before me was like that of an ancient hermitage, the joyous singer encircled by his devotees, all aureoled in divine love."
And Tagore reads his exquisite poems. Most of his songs and plays were written for the delectation of his students at Santiniketan, and Yogananda notes that the beauty of his lines lies in his art of referring to God in nearly every stanza, yet seldom mentioning the sacred name. "Drunk with the bliss of singing," Tagore wrote, "I forget myself and call thee friend who art my Lord."
The following day, after lunch, Yogananda bids the poet a reluctant farewell, and he says to Bola, "I rejoice that his little school has grown to an international university called Vishvabharati, where scholars of all lands have found an ideal setting."
And Yogananda quotes Tagore's own vision for education, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action. Into that heaven of freedom, let my country awake.
It's a vision of education as liberation, not filling heads with facts, but awakening the natural genius that's already there. And that's the bridge between these two chapters, you know? Tagore asks, how do we educate the whole human being? And the next chapter answers, what if education means learning that the whole universe is light?
Right, so we move from the philosophy of education to the metaphysics underneath it all. Because if you're going to truly educate a human being, you need to know what a human being actually is.
Chapter 30, The Law of Miracles. And this is dense. This is the most philosophically deep chapter in the entire book. Yogananda opens with a story from Leo Tolstoy called The Three Hermits.
3 old hermits living on an island. They're so simple that their only prayer is, "We are 3, thou art 3. Have mercy on us." Just that one simple prayer. And miracles manifest during this prayer. Great miracles.
A bishop comes to the island intending to teach them the proper canonical invocations, to educate them in Orthodox Christianity. And the hermits listen humbly, but they don't fully grasp it. So the bishop decides to correct them. But as he leaves the island in his boat, he looks behind him and sees the 3 hermits running toward the ship. They're walking on the water, literally walking on the water to catch him.
And the bishop asks them how they learned to walk on the water. And they explain that they tried to repeat the prayer he taught them, but they kept forgetting it. So they came up with their own prayer that they could remember. And their simple prayer, their authentic prayer, it worked. It produced miracles.
And Yogananda's commentary on this is crucial. He says, how did the 3 saints walk on the water? How did Christ resurrected his crucified body? How did Laharima Hasaya and Sri Yukteswar perform their miracles? Modern science has as yet no answer. But then he adds something that changes everything. Though with the advent of the atomic bomb and the wonders of radar, the scope of the world mind has been abruptly enlarged. The word impossible is becoming less prominent in the scientific vocabulary.
Because science is starting to catch up to what the yogis have always known, that the universe operates according to laws that we're only beginning to understand.
And this is where Yogananda introduces the fundamental principle. He says that the ancient Vedic scriptures declare the physical world operates under one fundamental law, Maya, the principle of relativity and duality. God, the sole life, is an absolute unity. He cannot appear as separate and biform manifestations of creation except under a false or unreal veil. And that cosmic illusion is Maya.
So Maya isn't evil. It's the mechanism by which unity appears as multiplicity. It's the veil, but it's also the loom on which the veil is woven. Newton's law of motion is actually a law of Maya. To every action there is always an equal and contrary reaction. Everything in nature betrays its Mayic origin. Electricity is a phenomenon of repulsion and attraction. The atom itself is a magnet with positive and negative poles.
The entire phenomenal world is under the inexorable sway of polarity. No law of physics, chemistry, or any other science is ever found free from inherent opposite or contrasted principles. And because of this, physical science cannot formulate laws outside of Maya itself. Nature is Maya. Natural science must perform deal with her ineluctable quiddity. In her own domain, she is eternal and inexhaustible.
So here's what I'm hearing.
Science deals with the world of duality, the world of pairs of opposites, light and shadow, positive and negative, matter and energy. But there's something beyond all of that, something that's not dual, something that's one.
Exactly. And Yogananda brings in Einstein to make this precise. He says that Einstein proved mathematically in his theory of relativity that the velocity of light, 186,000 miles per second, dominates the whole theory of relativity. Light velocity is a mathematical standard or constant, not because there's an absolute value, but because no material body whose mass increases with its velocity can ever attain the velocity of light. Only a body whose mass is infinite could equal the velocity of light.
So light is the ultimate limit. Light is the speed at which the universe operates. And Einstein's unified field theory reduces gravitational and electromagnetic phenomena to variations on a single law. And Yogananda says Einstein reaches across the ages to the rishi who proclaimed that the entire creation is made of a protean maya, a single substance appearing in infinite forms.
And then Yogananda makes the leap. He says this conception brings us to the law of miracles. If the entire universe is light, then a master who can manipulate light can perform what we call miracles.
Hold on, let me sit with this. You're saying the masters who perform miracles are not violating the laws of nature. They're operating according to a higher understanding of nature itself?
Yes. Yogananda says the masters who are able to materialize and dematerialize their bodies or any other object, and to move with the velocity of light, and to utilize the creative light rays in bringing into instant visibility any physical manifestation, have fulfilled the necessary Einsteinian condition. Their mass is infinite.
So in other words, they've stopped identifying with a limited physical form. Their consciousness has expanded to identify with the infinite, and from that state, moving matter becomes as easy as moving thought.
The consciousness of a perfected yogi is effortlessly identified, not with a narrow body, but with the universal structure. Gravitation, whether the force of Newton or the Einsteinian manifestation of inertia, is powerless to compel a master to experience weight. The yogi who knows himself as the omnipresent spirit is subject no longer to the rigidities of a body in time and space.
And they're not defying the laws of physics. They're transcending the domain in which those laws operate. You know, it's like how the rules of chess don't apply if you step outside the chessboard. The laws of physics are laws of the material realm, but consciousness can step outside that realm.
Yogananda says it beautifully. Their imprisoning rings past not have yielded to the solvent, I am he. That's a reference to the Upanishads. When a soul realizes its fundamental identity with the Absolute, the boundaries dissolve. The walls that seem to trap it are revealed as illusions.
And then Yogananda brings in the Bible. Fiat lux, and there was light. God's first command to his ordered creation brought into being the only atomic reality, light. On the beams of this immaterial medium occur all divine manifestations. Devotees of every age testify to the appearance of God as flame and light.
Light is the first manifestation, the first thing God said into existence. Everything else is light arranged in different ways, appearances, patterns in light.
So here's the teaching. Any master who has merged his consciousness with the Creator perceives the cosmic essence as light. To him, there is no difference between the light rays composing water and the light rays composing land. There's no difference between the light rays in flesh and the light rays in air. A master can transfer his body of light over the light rays of earth, water, fire, or air with equal ease.
And Yogananda illustrates this with a visual metaphor. He says optical images are built up on the same principle as halftone engravings. They're made of minute dottings or strippings far too small to be detected by the eye. The sensitivity of the retina is so great that a visual sensation can be produced by relatively few quanta of the right kind of light. Through a master's divine knowledge of light phenomena, he can instantly project into perceptible manifestation the ubiquitous light atoms.
So in other words, a master can take the light that's already everywhere and arrange it in a visible form, the way a projector takes light and creates an image on a screen.
And Yogananda extends this metaphor further. He says that in man's dream consciousness, where he has loosened in sleep his clutch on the egoistic limitations that bind him to the waking world, the omnipotence of his mind has a nightly demonstration. In dreams, he stands before the long-dead friends, resurrects the remotest scenes of his childhood. With that free and unconditional consciousness, known to all men in the phenomena of dreams, the God-tuned master has forged a never-severed link.
Wait, so he's saying that in dreams, we're actually doing the same thing that masters do in waking life. We're creating reality out of consciousness. We're arranging light atoms according to our will.
Exactly. Innocent of all personal motives and employing the creative will bestowed on him by the Creator, a yogi rearranges the light atoms of the universe to satisfy any sincere prayer of a devotee. For this purpose were man and creation made, that he should rise up as master of Maya, knowing his dominion over the cosmos.
And that connects back to the Genesis verse. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth."
We're made in God's image, which means we're made with the same creative power. But most of us don't know it. Most of us think we're limited to what the senses report. So we stay trapped at the level of Maya, playing out our small stories, thinking they're real.
But the master wakes up. The master realizes he's not the character in the story. He's the one who's creating the story. Or better yet, he realizes there's only one consciousness creating all stories.
And then Yogananda does something profound. He describes his own experience. In 1915, shortly after he entered the Swami order, he witnesses a vision of violent contrasts during World War I meditation. His consciousness is transferred to the body of a captain in command of a battleship. Thunder of guns, shots exchanged, a shell hits the powder magazine, the ship sinks. He jumps into the water, and as he surfaces, a stray bullet ends its flight in his chest. His whole body is paralyzed, yet he's aware of possessing it as one is conscious of a leg gone to sleep.
So he's experiencing death, or what seems like death.
And he thinks, at last the mysterious footstep of death has caught up with me. And he's about to sink into unconsciousness when he finds himself seated in the lotus posture in his Korpar road room.
He's back. The vision released him.
And then the most extraordinary part. He's hysterical. Tears pour forth as he joyfully stroked and pinched his retained possession, a body free from any bullet hole in a breast. He rocked to and fro, inhaling and exhaling to assure himself that he was alive.
He's confirming that his body is still intact, that he never actually died, that the death he experienced was real in consciousness but not in the body.
And then his consciousness is transferred again, this time to the captain's dead body by the glory shore. Complete confusion of mind comes upon him, and he prays, "Lord, am I dead or alive?"
And a dazzling play of light fills the whole horizon. A soft rumbling vibration forms itself into words. What has life or death to do with light? In the image of my light I have made you. The relativities of life and death belong to the cosmic dream. Behold your dreamless being. Awake, my child, awake. So that's the teaching. Life and death are both part of the dream. They're both Maya. They both belong to the realm of duality and polarity. But the true self, which is made in the image of light, is beyond all of that.
And as Yogananda finishes writing this chapter, he sits on his bed in the lotus posture. His room is dimly lit by 2 shaded lamps. Lifting his gaze, he notices that the ceiling was dotted with small mustard-colored lights, scintillating and quivering with a radium-like luster.
It's happening again. The vision is manifesting in waking consciousness.
At once, his physical body loses its grossness and becomes metamorphosed into astral texture. He feels a floating sensation as if barely touching the bed. The weightless body shifted slightly and alternately to left and right. He looked around the room. The furniture and walls were as usual, but the little mass of light had so multiplied that the ceiling was invisible. He was wonderstruck.
It's happening again. The vision is manifesting in waking consciousness.
And a voice speaks as though from within the light. Shedding its beam on the white screen of your bedsheets, it is producing the picture of your body. Behold, your form is nothing but light.
So the teaching is revealed through direct experience. The body, which seems so solid, so real, is actually light. And the master knows this not as a philosophy, but as a direct perception.
For a long time, Yogananda experiences this motion picture of his body in the dimly lit theater of his own bedroom. And he says, despite the many visions he has had, none was ever more singular. As his illusion of a solid body was completely dissipated, and his realization deepened that the essence of all objects is light, he looked up to the throbbing stream of life-trams and spoke entreatingly.
Divine light, please withdraw this my humble bodily picture into thyself, even as Elijah was drawn up to heaven by a flame.
And that's the prayer of a yogi who has glimpsed the truth, not clinging to the body, not attached to the appearance, understanding that the whole thing is light, and that light can return to its source whenever consciousness permits.
Okay, so we've moved from the philosophy of education to the metaphysics of reality itself. From Tagore's question, how do we awaken the whole human being, to Yogananda's answer, we awaken them to what they actually are, light.
And the miracles that the masters perform aren't violations of natural law. They're expressions of a deeper law that operates at the level of light and consciousness, beyond the domain of material physics. You know, it's actually very scientific when you think about it. Einstein said the same thing. The universe isn't made of matter. It's made of light, energy, consciousness.
And education then, real education, the kind Tagore was reaching for and the kind Yogananda was offering, is the process of remembering what you really are, of waking up to the truth that's already here.
That you are light, that consciousness is fundamental. that the world is made in the image of that consciousness, and so are you.
Next time, we meet the Sacred Mother, Sri Ramakrishna's widow, and the teaching gets even more intimate. The philosophy becomes embodied in a presence. What happens when you sit with someone who knows?
She's the living link to Sri Ramakrishna, the greatest saint of the 19th century. And what Yogananda learns from her is that wisdom isn't just a philosophy you understand. It's a grace you receive. It's transmitted through presence.
Through the silence between words, through the simple act of being seen by someone who sees truly.
And it changes everything for him. See you next time.